Hello and welcome to This Week in Travel. I'm your host Michelle Robson, and editor of Turning Left for Less. This week I'm going to be looking at flying into the Arctic Circle with Finnair and looking at Bodø and Trondheim and the journey that I took in between by train. At the moment I'm sitting in the 5-star Britannia hotel in Trondheim and sipping a glass of champagne. Now you may think, wow, she's splashing out because it's Norway, it's super expensive, but actually at the moment it's very cheap. So this glass is £13, which I think is pretty good for a rosé champagne. The currency is actually really good against the pound for us, so it's actually a great time to come to Norway, and also it's light almost 24 hours a day in most of Norway, so cheers. In the news this week, British Airways announced that it is going to be extending the minimum connection time at Terminal 5 from next January. This is quite extraordinary because to change aircraft within the same terminal should not require more than an hour, but from next January there's going to be a large amount of flights that will actually require 75 minutes minimum connection. Now if you're booking flights all on one ticket, you don't need to worry because it will not allow you to book anything other than the minimum connection time. Obviously, if you already have a booking, we're not quite sure what will happen, but I'm guessing they won't change anything. It will just be for new bookings, but at the moment they haven't made that clear. But I think to me it's an admission that things are not working that well at Heathrow. Almost every time I go, as I'm sure you know if you fly British Airways regularly, there's never a stand available, or if there is a stand, there's no one to operate the guidance to get on the stand, then there's no one to open the jet bridge. It's, you know, a never-ending catalogue of things not working as it should. And it was very interesting when I pulled up at Helsinki the other day with Finnair, and literally the minute we got on the stand there was someone ready to operate the jet bridge, and I just thought, wow, this is such a difference to Heathrow where that virtually never happens. I think the other problem as well is also transfer security. Prior to COVID there used to be a fast track there, and whilst it's still there, a lot of the time at the moment it's never actually open, and this means that there's longer queues than you'd expect normally. So all of this is adding up to not a great transfer experience at Heathrow, and I'm guessing that's why British Airways are changing it. But if you do have a booking at the moment, I wouldn't worry about it. As I said, if there's any changes, British Airways will let you know, but I don't think they'll be changing anything for existing bookings, just for new ones. But if you're struggling to get the flights that you want and can't understand why when it's got over an hour's connection time, that will be why, because it is changing from January. And I'll put the link with the full details of all the flights that are affected below in the details. Also in the news this week, American Express have said that they will no longer be offering a refund of fees if you decide to cancel partway through your year. This applies to credit cards only, not charge cards, and will start from the 2nd of October. Now at the moment, if you decide to take out a credit card, you can collect your bonus and then you can decide to cancel the card. And then American Express will give you a refund pro rata of the fees that are left for that year. I can understand their point of view here because actually a lot of people collect their bonus and then cancel the card, get a refund of the fees, and basically American Express are out of pocket. So I don't think they're actually wrong for doing this. If you have one of the American Express charge cards, which would be one of the legacy platinum cards, which is what I have, then you won't be affected by this. You can still cancel for a refund. At the moment I'm paying monthly anyway for my fees on the platinum card, so it generally wouldn't really apply anyway. But for credit cards, not charge cards, from the 2nd of October onwards, if you decide to cancel partway through your year, you will not receive a refund. So I would definitely be setting a reminder if you plan to cancel at the end of the year after that point, so that you don't let it go into the next year, because otherwise that could be a very costly mistake. Personally, I always think it's worth keeping the credit cards for the full year because, you know, there's lots of perks, which you can look at my previous episode on credit cards to hear more about that, and I'll put the link below. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about the trip that I'm currently on. Those watching on YouTube can see in the background I'm actually at Trondheim airport on my return leg home. I'm flying from Trondheim to Helsinki with Finnair and then onwards to London Heathrow with Finnair. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is why it's a great time to visit Norway. Now, if you think of Norway, you generally think it's really expensive, but at the moment it's very cheap for Norway. Not cheap in terms of maybe somewhere like South Africa, but it is very reasonably priced. This is because the Norwegian currency is currently very weak against the pound. It's been like this for most of 2023, so if you're going to come, this is the year to come before it starts to get better. So some example prices. I had a glass of champagne in the Britannia hotel last night, which cost £12 for a glass of good rosé champagne. So I think that's very reasonable. We had some drinks in the other place that I was visiting that I'll talk about, and there in a rooftop bar, a cocktail was £12 again. So if you compare that with London prices, I think that's pretty reasonable. So it's a really good time to visit. So I started my trip on a press trip with Finnair. We flew from London Heathrow on an A350 with the new seats, which you can find plenty of reviews of, and I will put the link in the details below if you want to read some of those reviews. And then I flew from Helsinki to somewhere called Bodø. Now it's actually spelled B-O-D-O, so we'd probably say Bodo, but it's pronounced something like Bodø. But anyone Norwegian watching, I apologise for my terrible pronunciation. It's definitely not my strong point speaking Norwegian. So Bodø is actually in the Arctic Circle, and Finnair have recently launched this as a new route. You can fly with Finnair either using your Avios, or if you pay cash, you can earn tier points as well as Avios. So if you're a One World collector, it's a great airline to fly on if you want to keep your Avios and tier points going. Bodø is actually in the Arctic Circle, and it's a great time of year to visit because obviously for a start it's not freezing cold, and secondly it's because it has the midnight sun, so it never actually gets dark there. There is a sunset that is maybe strongest around midnight, where it kind of goes to about what you call half mast, and you have beautiful colours in the sky. You know, it's all flaming red and orange and pink, really beautiful skies, but it doesn't actually go dark, which is very odd. It's quite nice because, you know, if you want to walk back after a night out, you don't have to worry about it being dark. You feel very safe because it's daylight all the time. So when you're choosing a hotel, you definitely need to make sure that you choose one that has good blackout curtains. In Bodø itself, there's not a huge choice of hotels currently at the higher end. I stayed in the Radisson and it's incredibly cheap at the moment. I was looking at prices for when I was there, and a standard entry-level room was £60. Can you believe that? Incredibly cheap. It's not the greatest Radisson I've ever stayed in. It doesn't have air conditioning, which most of the year isn't a problem. When we were there, we would be really lucky with the weather. I've been here for 5 days now, and it's been sunny and warm every single day. In Bodø, it was around about 19 to 21, but it varies hugely. It's very like the UK in that respect. You know, you can have 21 one day. In fact, I think we had 26 one day, and then it can be back to 9 degrees within a couple of days. So don't go expecting brilliant weather in the summer, but you might be lucky like us and have some fantastic weather. There is also a Clarion hotel there, and currently they are building a new 5-star hotel called the Wood, which is up on the hills overlooking Bodø. So it's going to be an amazing hotel with an infinity pool and a spa. That's due to open next year, where Bodø is actually the European Centre of Culture for next year. So what is there to do in Bodø? Well, firstly, there's lots of outdoor activities. There's a climbing centre where you can climb on rocks and do like a sort of rope walk between the rocks. I didn't do that, unsurprisingly. It made me feel slightly ill just looking at it, but if that's your kind of thing, the people that did do it said it was really fun, though slightly scary. I'll put all the details of that below. My favourite activity we did was we went on a rib boat out to a maelstrom. Now, maelstrom is where currents meet, and here it's all the water rushing in and out of the fjord with the tides, and you get lots of whirlpools and this really weird effect where the water just is so still in some places it doesn't look real, and then in other places it's really sort of rushing and in whirlpools. And we went in this rib boat and kind of sort of rode the maelstrom, as it were, around in the whirlpools, and saw some amazing scenery. The eagles were particularly good fun because they were feeding them fish, so they got them to swoop down right next to the boat. We got some really great views of some eagles there, so I really recommend doing that. The only downside to it is the law says that you have to wear a full immersion suit, which on a warm day is quite sweaty, I can tell you. It's also quite restrictive, you can't move terribly well in them, so I had fun getting in and out of the boat, but I did make it, fortunately. But yeah, it was a really good day. We also went to somewhere on the way for lunch where it's set up like a sort of Stone Age settlement, where you can see how they lived before and the sort of tools they used, and there's a fireplace, and you tried some traditional tea, and then we had a lovely local fish soup and tried some beer. Now, I'm not a beer lover, but I've really enjoyed the beer in Norway. The pale ale particularly has been great. I would actually recommend getting a car when you're there for a few days, because there's a lot of places actually you could go by car and drive around. So just amazing views everywhere. It's probably one of the most stunning places I've been, and let's face it, I've been to a lot of places. It really is beautiful. I would also recommend, if you like hiking, there's lots of amazing hikes. You can go up into the hills and watch the sunset, the midnight sun from there. There's a hike up to the top of the hill overlooking the city. That's really worth doing. And we also went out to an old trading post that I really enjoyed. Again, I'm going to put all the details of what we did below, and there you can look at the old houses in the settlement and trading post and how people used to live. There's also a nice cafe there, and there's also a hotel just along the road from there where you can go and have a really nice lunch overlooking a little harbour, which is really beautiful. We had lunch there and it was great, so definitely recommend doing that as a trip out. Another place to watch the sunset is the red sand beach. Now this is a little bit of a hike from the car park. It's around 15 to 20 minutes over slightly uneven ground. It's not particularly uphill, but there are a few little bits that are up a bit of a slope, but it's worth it to see the really unusual red sand on the beach. It does vary. Some days it's redder than others. I believe it's to do with the minerals, but if you wanted to go somewhere a bit different, that's well worth a little trip over to there. And even just where you park up, the beach there is also lovely, and great surrounding scenery. If you fancy doing a sauna, there's actually a sauna right in the harbour where you get to jump in the harbour afterwards, and that's right by, you also get the rib boat as well. But beware, the water is cold at this time of year. Even in the summer it's around 10 degrees centigrade, so it's quite chilly, but it looked like fun for those that wanted to do it. And the separate male and female changing facilities, you get towels, and then you come together in the joint sauna. So obviously with that you're wearing swimming costumes, and then you jump in the sea next to it. There are ladders to climb in and out if you're not feeling adventurous and don't want to jump. Again, all the links will be below. So what is there to do other than that during the evening? One of the things I was really impressed with is the food scene in Bodø. It was extremely sophisticated, not what I expected at all. We went to some great places. We went to a beautiful patisserie that was also specialising in chocolates and champagne, and I'll put the link in below. Now here they have some amazing chocolates made with the local salt from where the maelstrom is, and I really recommend buying some of these. If you like salted caramel, these are the best ones I've ever tasted. They have a great selection of champagne, everything from Krug to their own house champagne, and in the mornings they have the most amazing croissants that you'd expect to find in Paris, not in the Arctic Circle. So I really recommend popping in there. Just around the corner there's also a really nice restaurant that I'll put the link in, that also specialises in champagne, and the champagne that they have there is actually the same house of champagne that supplies Noma, the very famous 3 Michelin star restaurants, and this was one of the nicest champagnes I've tasted, and not overly expensive. The food there is quite fine dining, but they also do some more casual stuff if you'd like that as well. Down on the harbour in the Radisson Hotel they have an Asian restaurant. We had some amazing sushi there, and they do all sorts of Asian food, from kind of spring rolls to stir fries, and as I said, sushi as well. It's more sort of Japanese slanted, I'd say, more than anything, but really enjoyed that. If you want to go for cocktails, there are 2 rooftop bars. I'd recommend going to the one first, because that actually has an outside space, and that's the best for viewing the midnight sun, because it has a balcony that goes all the way round, and it's a bit higher up than the Radisson one. It's a bit more casual. I didn't particularly like the atmosphere. It felt a bit down market, I'd say, but the views were amazing, so we actually just went and had a look. We didn't have a drink there, whereas the Radisson bar feels very upmarket. They've got some great cocktails there, really good menu, with all sorts of cocktails, sort of ones that are their own cocktails, and also all the standard ones you'd expect as well. And as I said, prices were quite reasonable there, so both of those are well worth going to. There's a real outdoor feel here, which you might not expect in the Arctic Circle. Plenty of outdoor tables, because I think in the summer, when they've got sun 24 hours a day, they really want to make the most of it. I was sitting by the harbour at sort of 9 in the evening. It was still warm, because of course with the sun not really going down, it doesn't cool down that much, so it was really pleasant just sitting there, enjoying the view and the sunshine. So make sure you take your sunglasses on a night out, which you wouldn't normally expect. From Bodø, I took a train journey down to Trondheim. Now, I really recommend doing this train journey. It's the most scenic train journey I've ever been on, and it's viewed as one of the most scenic in Europe. Literally the whole way there was just stunning scenery from the moment you departed from Bodø, almost all the way through to Trondheim, apart from when you were in a tunnel. It's really cheap at the moment, so it cost me £45, and that was in their equivalent of first class, which is called premium class, and that includes tea, coffee, water, a couple of open sandwiches and some snacks as well. Loads of legroom in the seats, really comfortable. Everything was very clean. You get a table in front of you that folds out if you want a bigger surface, and there's also a power point for charging. So there's absolutely everything you want. There was Wi-Fi. It didn't work brilliantly the whole time, but then you can't expect it to when you're in the middle of nowhere. But it did work, and the rest of the time I just used my phone signal. The train journey takes nearly 10 hours, so it is a long time, but it just flew past because there was literally stunning scenery the whole time. Everything from snow-covered mountains to lakes, fjords, waterfalls, just really beautiful. You go through the Arctic Circle and they announce that, and there's a little sort of monument that commemorates it. This is also the highest point of the journey, 680 meters. So definitely have your cameras ready, and you'll probably take literally hundreds of photos like me, because it is just so beautiful. The good thing is that if you want to get up and stretch your legs, where there's coffee and tea in the first class section, there's a little bar table so you can stand up if you want for a while and enjoy the view. And there's also a really nice restaurant car. I actually had a moose burger, which I really enjoyed. It tasted a bit like a leaner version of beef, I'd say, not so gamey as something like reindeer maybe. It was really very tasty, but they had all sorts of things from a poke bowl to sandwiches, burgers, or just snacks as well. So and they also had alcohol, but there was a limit of one alcoholic drink that you could take away with you, which I thought was a bit odd, but they are quite funny about things like that here. It's very state controlled. When you go to buy wine in a shop, you have to go to a state controlled shop, but yeah, it's fine because you can actually sit in the dining car, which makes a nice change from sitting in your seat. You know, they've got proper some tables and chairs there, as well as sort of like a bar area if you just want to sit on a stool. It just helps, you know, stretch your legs after such a long journey. So I would definitely recommend doing that if you get a chance. They do also have a sleeper service, which is slightly more expensive. I think it's around £120. If you're on your own, you get a whole carriage to yourself. And obviously in the midnight sun, you would actually see something the whole way, but it felt like a bit of a shame to me because obviously part of the reason I did the trip was to see the scenery. You could fly between the two places, but personally I think actually I'd rather do the train journey because you just really get a chance to appreciate what a stunning country this is. I've been in Trondheim for a couple of nights. I didn't get a chance to see an awful lot because the train arrives in around 10:30 at night. So I had one full day to have a quick look around. There's a lot to do here. I barely scratched the surface of it. The old town is absolutely gorgeous. There's a bridge over the river here, and it's just full of brightly coloured houses that line the rivers, and it's just very scenic, and it doesn't feel busy. It doesn't feel like a big city. You can pretty much walk everywhere. There is bus service, which is quite handy, and also the tram. Now the tram goes out to a couple of lakes, so if you get a sunny day like I did, it was 28 degrees yesterday, you can go out and swim in one of the lakes. So the last couple of stops on the tram on number 9 are lake stops, so you can get off and have a swim or just enjoy it. They go every 15 minutes, so you don't have to worry about being stranded there for a while. You can stay as long as you like. And there's also a restaurant at the last stop, and that's tram number 9. It costs around £3 for a 2-hour pass for public transport. This was about the only thing that you might need cash for, but in fact you can use the ATB app to buy a ticket, which is what I did, and I've not used any cash at all the whole time. In Bodø they have taxis that you can book via an app. It's not Uber, but I will put that link in below. And taxi prices were, I'd say, probably London prices, but you could get one very quickly if you needed to. Most places are walkable. In Trondheim they do have Uber, but they are taxis. Trondheim has an amazing hotel called the Britannia. Now this is, I'd say, on a par to something like the Dorchester or the Savoy, or one of their grand dam hotels in Europe. It's really beautiful, and it's built in a very British style. It even has a black cab outside because the owner is something of an Anglophile. It has quite a history to it as well. I would definitely recommend staying here. At the moment the rates are very reasonable because of the exchange rate. I stayed in the Radisson Blu because the Britannia was full on one of the nights I was here. I'd also recommend that. It has nice river views. It's very close to the station. It's like 5 or 6 minutes walk. Even if you don't stay at the hotel, it's also worth visiting just for the restaurants and bars. There's a great wine bar in the basement, which has hundreds of bottles of wine, and they also do wine-based cocktails, which is an interesting concept. I didn't try it myself. I tried the house rosé champagne, which worked out about £12 a glass, and was really delicious. I also went for dinner in their Michelin starred restaurants, which is called Saltstraumen. It may surprise you that there are actually 3 Michelin star restaurants in Trondheim, which is amazing for such a small city. Saltstraumen, I would say, is quite traditional sort of French cooking, but with obviously local ingredients. It's probably one of the best meals I've had in a long time. I did the chef's table. It was definitely not cheap. It's several £100s. I will put the costings below when I've worked out the split between the wine pairing and the food, but it was absolutely amazing. You sit and watch the chefs work, which not all chefs' tables actually are like that. They're right in front of you, just finishing off each dish. There's a lot of fish, so if you're not a fish lover, then it wouldn't be for you. And to be honest, you're probably going to struggle a bit in Norway because it is huge amounts of fish, but it is just amazing. The scallops alone were worth going for. They were absolutely huge. Really enjoyed that experience. You can also eat in the brasserie there, which is very French and much more casual, and has some outdoor seating, which is nice in this sort of weather. And finally, there is also the Palm restaurant, which is serving afternoon tea at weekends, and also has a buffet on some lunchtimes as well during the summer. So definitely worth checking out the hotel. I will be including it in my review article, so keep an eye out for that on Turning Left for Less. Going back to the Radisson when I stayed, it's just had a complete refit, so if you see bad reviews of it, I would check the date of them. It's only just had the refit in the last couple of months, so anything before that probably isn't really valid. I thought the room was really good. It looks very modern and stylish. It has air conditioning of a sort. It didn't quite get down to the temperature that you set. Basically, you could get it to about 21, but actually that was perfectly adequate. The bed was very comfortable. There was an espresso machine, tea and coffee, pretty much everything you could need. The only thing I've noticed in Norway is they don't seem to give milk with the tea and coffee in the room, which is a bit odd. So you might want to bring some little sachets with you from somewhere if you definitely want your milk, or just pop out to one of the local shops. There's quite a few corner shops here that you could buy a carton of milk from. In Trondheim itself, I would also mention it's worth going to the Old Town Bridge, which is the bridge over to the Old Town, as you'd expect. A very pretty place to take photos, and then nice to have a wander around the Old Town. It's a great place to have a drink or something to eat. Lots of casual places here, not so much the fine dining, but lovely during the daytime to sit and have a nice coffee outside, or perhaps have a few drinks in the evening where it's quite lively. So that's pretty much all about my trip to Norway. As I said, now is the time to go before the currency gets worse for us. I'd also recommend Oslo. I went there in November, really enjoyed that as well. So either of these places are definitely in my recommendations of must visits, but I personally preferred the north, and just the stunning scenery, and the fresh air was just, it sounds weird, but you just feel like there's more oxygen, which apparently there is. Apparently there's, I think, probably due to all the trees and the clean air, you just feel like the air is beautifully clear, and it feels very healthy here. Great food, lovely people, very friendly, everything's very easy. You can use a card for everything, you don't need any cash. So what's not to like? Definitely recommend coming here. So I'm halfway in my journey. I'm here at Helsinki airport. I'm just about to go and sample the lounge. Both the lounges here are really good, including the business class lounge and also the platinum lounge, which is for people with One World Emerald or Gold card holders on British Airways, and of course Finnair status holders. It's one of my favourite lounges. They do a great Rudolph burger, as I call it, a reindeer burger. They have champagne, which is the Joseph Perrier, which is very good, and they have a little buffet as well. So as well as that, they have a sauna. I will not be sampling that today. I feel hot enough already after my journey, but worth bearing in mind. I'm actually at gate 29 here at Helsinki, where if you're watching, you'll see behind me there's actually a display of Finnair uniforms through the past, because it's Finnair's 100-year anniversary this year. So if you want to find it, it's in the big open area, which is behind gate 29, and that's on the Schengen side, so that's the European side. So if you are flying from here on a Schengen zone flight, come and have a look at it. It's well worth it. Some very interesting, rather groovy outfits to look at. Well, that's all for today. So until next week, happy travels.